Hello and welcome to the Myschool channel. My name is Angela, and in this video we're going to be tackling the JAMB past question for literature in English for the year 2024. Please stay with us, don't go anywhere, we'll be right back. Welcome back to the Myschool channel. Like I said earlier, we're going to be tackling the JAMB past question for the year 2024 for literature in English. So in this video, we're going to be focusing on questions 1 to 32. Let's begin with question 1. This question is based on literary appreciation. Football is the only sport on earth that can be considered truly global, simple and inexpensive. It is equally likely to be found in a tight Maceo Balui, an obscure corner of a Lagos slum, and the heart of Buenos Barrio. Mali's music is similarly universal. According to the excerpt above, football is A, played only in Lagos slums, B, footballers like Mali's music, C, popular but cheap, and D, a universal game. The answer to this question is option D, a universal game, and we can see that in the excerpt where it says that football is the only sport on earth that can be considered truly global. Global means universal. That means you can find it in every corner of the world. It also compares football to Mali's music, which is similarly universal. So this makes football a universal game. It may feel like option C can also be the answer to this question, but please note that the use of the conjunction but already negates the idea, the sentiment of the writer of this particular excerpt. So the fact that it says popular but cheap means that there is a judgment that football is a cheap sport. But this is not the sentiment of the writer. The writer says that it is simple and inexpensive. So the use of and, the conjunction and here, shows that there is no judgment about the fact that it is inexpensive. Also, the use of inexpensive shows that there is no judgment on the part of the writer. It doesn't make use of the word cheap, it makes use of inexpensive. So all of this suggests that popular but cheap is not the sentiment of the writer. It is popular and inexpensive. So from this explanation, we can see that option D, a universal game, is the answer to this question. Question 2. The Commission has the power to investigate, to conciliate, to hold hearings, to order reinstatement of a discharged employee, and to direct the appointment of a qualified applicant. The rhetorical device used in the excerpt above is A, irony, B, personification, C, hyperbole, and D, parallelism. The answer to this question is option D, parallelism. Parallelism is a rhetorical device that makes use of similar grammatical constructions in a line of a particular literary work. So parallelism is a rhetorical device. That means it helps to make the speech made by someone who is speaking, or it helps to make a poem more rhetoric. That means it becomes more memorable in the minds of the readers or the listeners. So parallelism is the rhetorical device used in these lines because you can see the repetition of similar grammatical constructions to investigate, to conciliate, to hold hearings, to order reinstatement of a discharged employee, to direct the appointment of a qualified applicant. You can see a repetition of similar grammatical construction. So this makes option D, parallelism, the answer to this question. Question 3. Lonely road, not a star, lonely road, shadows far and quiet. This excerpt is from Peter Abraham's Lonely Road. The rhyme scheme in the excerpt above is A, B, C, D, E, C, B, A, B, C, C, B, A, C, and D, A, B, C. The answer to this question is option B, A, B, C. So rhyme scheme is the repetition of similar sounds in lines of a poem. So when you see a repetition of similar sounds in different lines of the poem, there is a rhyme scheme there. So in this particular case, we can see the repetition of the D sound at the end of the first line and the third line. So we'll assign the letter A to both of them. And then we'll see the repetition of the final sound in line 2 and 4, not a star, shadows far. They rhyme with each other, so we assign the letter B to both of them. So we have A, B. And then quiet, the last sound there doesn't rhyme with any of the above lines, so we assign the letter C to that. So we have A, B, C. So the rhyme scheme of this poem is A, B, C. Option B is the answer to this question. Question 4. This question is based on Alex Aguirre's Unexpected Joy at Dawn. The setting of the novel is A, Nigeria and Ghana, B, Nigeria and Togo, C, Ghana and Niger, and D, Nigeria and Benin. The answer to this question is option A, Nigeria and Ghana. So, unexpected during at dawn is set in both Nigeria and Ghana. The immediate setting in Ghana is Accra, and the immediate setting is in Ilare and Ijashe in Lagos. So these are the settings, the physical settings of the play. So the play is narrating the story of someone who navigates socio-political issues in both Nigeria and Ghana in the mid to late 20th century. So option A, Nigeria and Ghana, is the answer to this question. Question 5. Wachuk in the novel is A, the cigarette seller, B, Nee's friend, C, Idem's husband, and D, the alcohol seller. The answer to this question is option C, Idem's husband. So Wachuk is Idem's husband. Wachuk and Idem, they are the couple who always fights in Mama Roger's compound. So while Wachuk works in a printing house in Mafoluku in Lagos, Idem sells provision at a provision store behind the house where they live. So Wachuk is Idem's husband. Option C is the answer to this question. Question 6. In Senghor's Black Woman, the dominant literary device is A, hyperbole, B, personification, C, simile, and D, metaphor. The answer to this question is option D, metaphor. Metaphor is a literary device where there is a comparison, a direct comparison between one thing and another. So in Leopold Sedar Senghor's Black Woman, the Black woman is directly compared to abstract and natural elements within the poet's environment. So one example of metaphor used in the poem is clothed in your color, which is beauty, and in your form, which is life. So you can see metaphor used in this line because the poet is comparing her color to an apparel that she has put on. He also compares that apparel to life itself, and he also compares a form to beauty itself. So you can see the direct comparison to abstract elements in the poem. So there is a dominant use of metaphor in the lines of this poem. You see a lot of metaphor within this poem. So there is also the use of personification and simile in the poem. Personification in the sense that it describes the savannah as shuddering in the east wind's eager caresses. So you can see a lot of personification. The savannah takes on a human quality, the ability to shudder. And then the east wind also takes on the ability to caress something. So all of these represent the use of personification in the lines of the poem. But please note that personification is not a dominant literary device used in the poem. The dominant literary device used in the poem is metaphor because we see a lot of the use of metaphor in the lines of the poem. So this makes option D, metaphor, the answer to this question. Question 7. Sese's The Song of the Women of My Land is A, political poem, B, geographical poem, C, social poem, and D, panegyric poem. The answer to this question is option D, panegyric poem. A panegyric poem is a poem that praises someone or something publicly. So in this case, it's praising the efforts of the women in colonial Sierra Leone. So Sese comes from Sierra Leone and is praising the efforts of these women that lived during that time, who toiled night and day in the fields without recognition from the people of Sierra Leone. So he's trying to praise their efforts to ensure that the effort that they've placed into the development of the nation continues to be recognized by future generations. So this makes the poem a panegyric poem. Option D is the answer to this question. Question 8. In Eliot's Journey of the Magi, 6 hands at an open door is an example of option A, synecdoche, B, irony, C, alliteration, and D, metonymy. The answer to this question is option A, synecdoche. Synecdoche is a literary device in which a whole can be used to represent a part and a part can be used to represent a whole. In this case, the part is used to represent the whole. So the part is the 6 hands. The 6 hands at an open door represents the 3 Magi who are on this journey. So it represents their hands grabbing at an open door. So there's the use of synecdoche. The 6 hands is representing the 3 Magi who are on this journey. So it is not irony, because irony involves saying the direct opposite of what you mean. Then it can be alliteration as well, because alliteration involves the repetition of initial consonant sounds in the line of a poem, and there is no repetition of initial consonant sounds in this line. It can be metonymy, although metonymy and synecdoche are similar in a way, but it's important to note that metonymy involves the use of something that represents the thing you're referring to represent that thing. For example, when you say the crown is dead, the crown is used to represent the king. Remember that the crown is not a part of the king, it's not a physical part of the king, it's just a symbol used to represent the king. So that's when you use metonymy. When a symbol represents the actual thing, that is metonymy. But here, it is the part of that person that is used to represent the whole. So that's the reason why synecdoche is the answer to this question. So option A is the answer. Question 9. Oshundare's The Leader and the Led is A. Dramatic, B. Satiric, C. Narrative, and D. Elegiac. The answer to this question is option B. Satiric. A satire is a literary work that is designed to mock the ills of the society in order to correct them. So Oshundare's poem The Leader and the Led is satiric in nature because it mocks the leaders in Africa, particularly here in Nigeria, with the aim of correcting them. So it mocks them by comparing them to different animals to show how they often put their selfish interest above all else in the society. So it does this in order to correct them, to ensure that they understand that these are their failures as leaders of the country and they should work towards correcting them. So that is the reason this poem is a satiric poem. So option B is the answer to this question. Question 10. The poet's persona in Donne's The Good Morrow reflects on A. Spiritual love, B. The immortality of love, C. Falling in love, and D. Love marriage. The answer to this question is option B. The immortality of love. So the poem The Good Morrow by John Donne expresses the theme of the immortality of love. So the poet's persona in the poem is trying to explain how the love that he has for his lover is immortal. And we can see this in the last stanza of the poem. It compares himself and his lover to two hemispheres that come together to form a whole. So he says that whatever dies was not mixed equally. If two lovers be one, thou and I, none do slacken and none can die. So these are the lines that you can find in the third stanza of the poem. So it explains that whatever dies was not mixed equally. Two things that have come together can't die as long as they are mixed equally. They complement each other. So when they come together to form a whole, and as long as none of them slacken, that means none of them pulls back in their efforts to be together, that relationship is designed to last long. None of them can die. So it's expressing the immortality of love. Love doesn't die as long as they are mixed equally. They complement each other. So all of this expresses the immortality of love. Option B is the answer to this question. Question 11. The style of Chibuike's A Government Driver on His Retirement is A. Narrative, B. Monologic, C. Reflective, and D. Panegyric. The answer to this question is option A. Narrative. So the poem is a narrative poem in the sense that it tells a story and teaches a moral lesson at the end of the day. So it narrates the story of a civil servant who, after years of being sober and carefully tending to his duty, decides on the day of his retirement to drink, and he drinks a lot. And so on his way home, while driving drunk, he encounters an accident and he dies. So this story is designed to teach the effects of intoxication. It's important not to drink while drunk. It also teaches the effects of poor decisions, making poor decisions, and how poor decisions can undo all of the good that we've done over the years. So the poem is designed to tell a story and also to teach a moral lesson at the end of the day. So this makes option A, narrative, the answer to this question. Question 12. But a caged bird stands on the grave of dreams. The excerpt above from Angelo's Caged Bird implies that the caged bird A will die, B will be frustrated, C stand on its grave, D walks freely to actualize its dreams. The answer to this question is option B, will be frustrated. So Maya Angelou's Caged Bird is designed to illustrate the effects of the lack of freedom of the African American people in the American society. So the caged bird symbolizes the African Americans in 20th century American society. So it's trying to show how this caged bird will be frustrated as long as it continues to be caged. The caged bird will stand on the grave of dreams. So it shows how there is a sense of frustration when you are caged. All your hopes and aspirations will die because you do not have that freedom to fly freely and to explore the world as you see fit. But when you are caged, you stand on the grave of dreams because your hopes and aspirations die with you right there in the cage. So this expresses the frustration that the caged bird will feel while being caged. So it's a metaphor that symbolizes the sense of frustration that results from the loss of hope and aspiration as a result of being caged. So option B, will be frustrated, is the answer to this question. Question 13. Lawrence's Bat is A, sarcasm, B, satire, C, dramatic dialogue, and D, dramatic monologue. The answer to this question is option D, dramatic monologue. It is a dramatic monologue because we are looking at things from the perspective of the poet's persona who is having a conversation in his mind. So he's speaking to himself, so we can hear the monologue going on inside of his head. So the poem is trying to express the speaker's perspective as it moves from one emotion to another. So it begins with a sense of admiration. He's sitting in front of his apartments, on the balcony of his apartments, overlooking the Italian landscape, and he admires what he sees. Then this admiration eventually moves to confusion, as those things that he sees flying in the air, he assumes they were birds at first. But then he begins to get confused, as the things were not behaving like birds usually do. So you can see the movement from admiration to confusion. Then it eventually moves to discomfort, in the sense that he eventually discovers that these birds are not actually birds, but they are bats. And then this discomfort eventually moves to disgust. So he describes these bats as rags, and he used so many other derogatory terms to refer to these bats to express his disgust towards these creatures. So all of this expresses the fact that we are looking at, or we are reading the monologue going on inside the head of the poet's persona in the poem. So this makes option D, dramatic monologue, the answer to this question. Do you know you can take practice questions with our simulated JAMB CBT past question? All you need to do is to go down to the link in the description below. This takes you to the Myschool website, where you can download the Myschool mobile app for your Android devices and the Myschool software for your laptops and computers. Please go ahead and start practicing. Now on to question 14. This question is based on Wole Soyinka's The Lion and the Jewel. Lakunle declines to pay bride price on CD because he sees tradition as A, unholy, B, illegal, C, barbaric, and D, childish. The answer to this question is option C, barbaric. So when Lakunle and CD are having a conversation in Act 1, Scene 1 of the play, and CD was telling him that if he wants to be with her, he has to pay the bride price. But he declines to pay the bride price because he sees this tradition as barbaric. He considers it a savage custom and a barbaric custom. And we can see this on page 7 of the play. Option C, barbaric, is the answer to this question. I believe you're enjoying this content. If yes, please do not forget to hit the like button, click on the subscribe button, and lastly, tap on the notification bell to get informed as soon as we release the next videos. Question 15. This question is again based on Wole Soyinka's The Lion and the Jewel. The play is A, comedy, B, tragicomedy, C, farce, and D, melodrama. The answer to this question is option A, comedy. So The Lion and the Jewel is a comedy because it uses light-hearted humor and witty dialogue to explore the various themes in the play. Themes such as tradition versus modernity, gender roles, and cultural identity. So it makes use of this light-hearted humor to express various themes in the play. And the play also ends on a light note, in the sense that nothing of tragic consequence occurred at the end of the play. So this makes The Lion and the Jewel a comedy. Option A is the answer to this question. Question 16. This question is based on John Osborne's Look Back in Anger. Alison and Jimmy are accommodated during the first months of their marriage by A, Hugh Tanner, B, Nigel, C, Cliff, and D, Webster. The answer to this question is option A, Hugh Tanner. Hugh Tanner is Jimmy's friend, and he was the one who accommodated Alison and Jimmy during the first months of their marriage. So during their time at Hugh Tanner's apartments, Hugh Tanner and Jimmy usually go out on raids, in the sense that they went out to raid the upper class members of the society. Jimmy, who is known to have this sense of resentment or bitterness towards the upper class members of the British society, always goes out with this Hugh Tanner to raid these upper class members because they felt like they've been disadvantaged as a result of the fact that they all were given the opportunity to go to the university, but as soon as they came out of the university, they were not given opportunities to advance in the society, and they remained members of the lower class or the lower middle class within the British society. So he felt resentment and bitterness towards these upper class people, and so he regarded Hugh Tanner as a co-conspirator. They both went out to raid these upper class members of the society. So option A, Hugh Tanner, is the answer to this question. Question 17. This question is again based on John Osborne's Look Back in Anger. The protagonist in the play is A, Alison Potter, B, Cliff Lewis, C, Jimmy Potter, and D, Colonel Redfern. The answer to this question is option C, Jimmy Potter. Jimmy Potter is the protagonist of the play. So the events in the play revolve around him. So it revolves around his unhappy marriage with Alison, as well as his resentment, his anger towards the upper class older generation of the English people. So all of these are adequately discussed within the novel. It is told from his perspective. He feels resentment and anger towards Alison because she's a member of the upper class society. He married her, and all of his bitterness and resentment was directed towards her because she was a member of that class of the society. So option C, Jimmy Potter, is the answer to this question. Question 18. The couple's marital crisis is aggravated by A, Jimmy, B, Cliff, C, Helena, and D, Hugh. The answer to this question is option C, Helena. Helena is Allison's friend. She comes to visit Allison at some point in the play. And when she comes to visit, Allison confides in Helena about the crisis that they have in their marriage. And Helena advises Allison to leave Jimmy. So Allison agrees to this and she eventually packs out of the house. When she packs out of the house, Helena moves in, believing she can control Jimmy and make him a better husband for her. So Helena eventually moves in and they begin to live together. Allison eventually discovers this at the end of the novel. So all of this suggests that she was the one who aggravated the marital crisis between Jimmy and Allison. Option C, Helena, is the answer to this question. Question 19. The reason why Jimmy easily gets along with Cliff is because A, they both belong to the working class, B, Allison speaks well of Cliff, C, the relatives of Jimmy's mother are rich, D, they are both from affluent backgrounds. The answer to this question is option A, they both belong to the working class. So Jimmy only establishes friendship with those people who belong to the same working class that he does. The only people he has resentment or anger towards are people who come from upper class backgrounds. Allison is one of these people. So he has resentment towards Allison, but he has a closer relationship with Cliff because they share a camaraderie. They understand the kind of situation they are in, and so they can have a conversation with each other. So the fact that they both belong to the working class makes it easy for Jimmy to get along with Cliff. Option A is the answer to this question. Question 20. Jimmy's hamartia is A, infidelity, B, anger, C, pride, and D, jealousy. The answer to this question is option B, anger. Jimmy's hamartia or tragic flaw is his anger, his resentment towards the upper class, older generation of the English society. So we can see that this is his tragic flaw because this is what eventually leads to his downfall. It is what eventually leads to the breakup of his marriage between himself and Allison. So option B, anger, is the answer to this question. Question 21. This question is based on Buchi Emecheta's Second-Class Citizen. Ada is so obsessed with the sleek woman at the hospital because the woman A, has a doting husband, B, has a high-paying job, C, gives birth to twins, and D, lives in a mansion. The answer to this question is option A, has a doting husband. So when Ada was at the maternity home, when she gives birth to her first child, she discovers so many other women who have caring and doting husband, especially the sleek woman who was being showered with flowers, different dolls, and boxes that played mad music, according to Ada. So when she sees all of this, she contrasts this with her troubled marriage with Francis, and she never realized that women can be treated so well by their husband. So this is what makes Ada so obsessed with the sleek woman who was at the hospital along with her. So this makes option A, has a doting husband, the answer to this question. Question 22. Again, this question is based on Buchi Emecheta's Second-Class Citizen. Ada's disappointment is in the overwhelming A, freedom for the blacks, B, reception of the blacks, C, recognition given the blacks, and D, discrimination against the blacks. The answer to this question is option D, discrimination against the blacks. So in the 20th century, where this novel is set, we discover that when Ada moves to London, she discovered that there was a lot of discrimination against the black people, especially immigrants from other countries. So she also experienced this while she was searching for an apartment to live in. When her landlord told her to leave her first house in London, she had to search for a new apartment. And every apartment she went to visit, it had the sign, sorry, no colored. So this suggests that black people were not allowed to live in very good apartments during that time. So she had no other option than to settle for a rundown apartment that is owned by a Nigerian immigrant, Mr. Noble. So all of this shows the discrimination that is present against the blacks in 20th century English society. Also the fact that when she had a problem with Trudy, the person who she had assigned to take care of her children, the whites were actually in support of Trudy, in spite of the glaring evidence that she was on the wrong side of the arguments. So all of this suggests that there is a lot of discrimination against the black people in the English society at the time. So this makes option D, discrimination against the blacks, the answer to this question. Question 23. The main challenge Ada encounters in England is A, being a woman, B, financial limitations, C, being half literate, and D, being a black person. The answer to this question is option D, being a black person. So while she was in Nigeria, she was experiencing challenges with being a woman. But when she steps foot in London, she begins to face the challenges of racial discrimination within the 20th century English society. So at first, when she steps into London and she discovers the apartment that Frances had rented, Frances gave the excuse that by telling her that when will you realize that as soon as you step foot in London, you become a second-class citizen. This is what he tells Ada when she complains about the apartment that he had rented. So this shows that there is a lot of racial discrimination within the English society at the time. So Ada continued to believe that she still had access to better opportunities until when she began to look for a new apartment for them later on in the novel. She discovered that most of the apartments, the vacant apartments, had the "sorry, no colored" sign on their vacancy. So this shows that colored people or black people were not allowed to rent good apartments within the society. So she had to settle for a rundown apartment. So all of this suggests that the main challenge that Ada faced while she was in Britain is the challenge of being a black person. Option D is the answer to this question. Question 24. The structure of the novel is based on two major conflicts of A, love, B, passion, C, emotion, and D, romance. The answer to this question is option B, passion. So it is based on two major conflicts of passion and not love. Passion in the sense that it encompasses both love and revenge. So he has this intense feeling of passion towards these two aspects of his life. His love for Catherine Earnshaw and his revenge to both Hindley Earnshaw and Edgar Linton, both of whom have crossed him while he was young. So all of this suggests that it is the two major conflicts of passion that the structure of the novel is based on. So he actually fell in love with Catherine Earnshaw, and this love was so passionate because they loved each other dearly. But eventually, Catherine Earnshaw was given to Edgar Linton, his arch nemesis. So Catherine Earnshaw eventually marries Edgar Linton. So in the second part of the novel, he decides to plot his revenge against these people who had separated him from the love of his life, Catherine Earnshaw. So in his fit of revenge, he takes over Wuthering Heights, which was initially owned by Hindley Earnshaw, because of the fact that he was the one who orchestrated the separation between himself and Catherine Earnshaw. He also marries Edgar Linton's sister, that is Isabella Linton, and he treats her cruelly during the time of their marriage. And then when they give birth to a son, he eventually takes the child of Edgar Linton and Catherine Earnshaw, that is Cathy. He takes Cathy and then gives her to his son, his sickly son, to marry. And this also leads to the suffering of Cathy Linton, that is Catherine Earnshaw and Edgar Linton's child. So all of this suggests that the passion of love and the passion for revenge are the two major conflicts in the novel. So the structure of the novel is based on the two major conflicts of passion, the passion of love and the passion for revenge. Option B is the answer to this question. Question 25. The setting of the novel is A, mid-16th century, B, mid-17th century, C, mid-18th century, and D, mid-19th century. The answer to this question is option C, mid-18th century. So the setting of the novel takes place across several generations. It begins when Heathcliff, the main character, was a young boy. The narration of the story also involves someone who is listening to the story being narrated, the story of Heathcliff being narrated. So this particular person who was listening to the story was living around the early 1800s when all of these issues had already occurred. The story about the love and the revenge of Heathcliff had already occurred earlier on. So all of these things occur between the mid-18th century, that's mid-1700s, to the early 1800s. So this makes option C, mid-18th century, the answer to this question. Question 26. The novel can be described as A, Renaissance prose, B, Victorian novel, C, French fiction, and D, English autobiography. The answer to this question is option B, Victorian novel. So a Victorian novel is usually a novel that is written in the mid-19th century. However, this novel was published in 1847, just before the Victorian era began. But it's important to note that this novel can still be classified as a Victorian novel because it explores Victorian themes of the issues of social class within the English society. The fact that the main character, Heathcliff, was not okay with the way he was being treated because he was a member of the lower class suggests that this is a Victorian novel. Heathcliff was not a member of the upper class that the members of Wuthering Heights belonged to. He was adopted by Hindley Earnshaw, and so as a result of that, he was treated badly by the people that were living in Wuthering Heights. So this is exploring the theme of social classes. So it also explores themes such as obsessive love and the inner turmoil that comes as a result of that. So all of these themes too, you can find them in Victorian novels. It also explores Gothic elements, that is the darker aspects of human nature and also supernatural events. So all of these are explored in the novel. The fact that they explored a man's desire for revenge and how he actually plotted out the revenge and brought that revenge to actualization suggests that they're exploring the darker aspects of human nature. The fact that there are also a lot of supernatural events occurring in the play, such as the presence of ghosts and other things, also suggests that it's a Victorian novel. Victorian novels explores Gothic elements. So option B, Victorian novel, is the answer to this question. Question 27. Heathcliff considered himself the second half of A. Nellie Dean, B. Isabella Linton, C. Hindley Earnshaw, and D. Catherine Earnshaw. The answer to this question is option D, Catherine Earnshaw. Catherine Earnshaw is the person that Heathcliff has this obsessive love for. He considered Catherine Earnshaw the second half of himself, and when they eventually give Catherine Earnshaw out to be married to Edgar Linton, it breaks his heart, and this is what leads to his desire for revenge. He eventually perpetrates this revenge in the lives of Hindley Earnshaw, Edgar Linton, and Catherine Earnshaw's child Isabella Linton, and so many other people who are treated him poorly at the beginning of the novel. So option D, Catherine Earnshaw, is the answer to this question. Do you have a question? Please feel free to ask your question by going down to the link in the description below. This takes you to my school website where you can ask your question and a solution will be provided to you within a short period of time. Now to question 28. This question is based on general literary principles. The collection of images within a literary work is referred to as A. Imagery, B. Images, C. Symbolism, and D. Caesura. The answer to this question is option A. Imagery. Imagery is the collection of images within a literary work. So when we're talking about imagery, it's a literary device that helps to build different images in the minds of the readers. These images can be visual, it can be oral. That means it appeals to your sense of hearing. It can be olfactory, appealing to your sense of smell, or gustatory, appealing to your sense of taste, or tactile, appealing to your sense of touch. So all of this collection of images are referred to as imagery. Option A, imagery, is the answer to this question. Do you have a better explanation or solution to any of these questions? If you do, please go down to the comment section below, indicate the question number and the solution you'd like to share. Question 29. The leading character in a literary work is the A. Protagonist, B. Antagonist, C. Villain, D. Anti-hero. The answer to this question is option A. Protagonist. The protagonist is the leading character in a literary work. It is around the protagonist that the central events in the play revolve around. So option A, protagonist, is the answer to this question. Question 30. A long narrative poem that relates heroic exploits is A. Panegyric, B. Lyric, C. Ballad, and D. Epic. The answer to this question is option D. Epic. An epic poem is a long narrative poem that narrates the heroic exploits of a hero. So usually in this poem, you have a hero who goes on an adventure to discover himself or to rescue someone. So this particular poem narrates the hero's journey as he finds himself or rescues someone. So it narrates the heroic exploits of a hero. So option D, epic, is the answer to this question. Question 31. A poem of 8 rhyming lines is A. Quatrain, B. Octave, C. Sonnet, and D. Limerick. The answer to this question is option B, octave. Octave is a poem of 8 rhyming lines. A quatrain is a poem of 4 rhyming lines. A sonnet is a poem that contains 14 lines and they rhyme with each other. So depending on the situation, it can be Petrarchan, it can be Shakespearean. Then a limerick is a humorous poem with 5 rhyming lines. The answer to this question is option B, octave, because it's a poem of 8 rhyming lines. Question 32. The events that make up the story is the A, plot, B, setting, C, atmosphere, and D, theme. The answer to this question is option A, plot. A plot is the events that make up a story. It begins with the exposition, where the characters are introduced, then moves on to the conflict, where the conflict, the central bone of tension, is introduced in the play. And then we have the rising action as events begin to unfold. Then we have the climax, where the main event occurs in the story that increases the tension, the suspense in the minds of the reader. Then we have the falling action, where things begin to eventually resolve. And then we have the final resolution, where things are eventually resolved in the play. So all of this is what makes up the plot of the story, the events that make up the story. So option A, plot, is the answer to this question. I believe you're enjoying this content. If yes, please do not forget to hit the like button, click on the subscribe button, and lastly, tap on the notification bell to get informed as soon as we release the next videos.